welcome to today's video in which I, Amy, am going to teach you how to write a novel from start to finish. Well, today's the first episode. I'm going to make a full series out of this since, as you all may imagine, there is quite a few different steps to writing a novel, and I'd really like to dive into multiple different aspects that I have learned over the years, and also that I've learned from my various parts of education that I've actually employed, and I am currently writing a novel. Basically, I should be writing right now, but I will be writing later today in my debut novel, and I really hope that I can provide you some really good tips and tricks. Please remember, this is kind of a personal level of how I start and how I approach a novel idea, and how I take it to completion, and how I'm working to improve that every day to make sure I stay on target, or at least get it finished someday. So if you like this video, by the end, if you could leave me a like, and please, if you like my content, I've got some other things available that'll be there at the end of the video, such as bookshop reviews and book reviews and all sorts of things, then consider giving me a sub down below and hit that little bell, so you can see my content as it becomes live. I normally post on weekends, but we'll be trying to start filming as much as possible when the light is good in my office space where I have my bookshelves and things behind me. And let's just jump straight into it today. So as you can probably imagine with episode 1, we're going to start at the beginning. So this is going to be the step where you've had an idea for a novel or potentially a series. There's no pressure to think of a series off the top of your head. If you have an idea for a novel, you really want to run with that idea above all else. The series can wait. The normal publication industry will often trick you. If you look at kind of guides from publishers on the internet, the most popular way to get novels out into the world, depending on the genre and things, is actually in groups of 3. So most traditional publishers won't actually accept a standalone novel if you're looking within kind of genres such as fantasy or sci-fi, things like that. They won't accept a novel unless you have plans in place for a sequel and a following trilogy book. So just kind of keep that in mind, but you really don't want to be thinking about that. You want to focus first of all of your actual first idea, and you really want to nurture that and kind of plan and really develop it the best you can. And so to that end, I'm really going to focus today on as if you are going to be writing a novel, not a series of novels, but I will touch on that later in the series of videos that I want to put out. Today we're going to be looking at starting your process of how to really start writing a novel. So first and foremost, you may have heard this time and time again across multiple different people and writers, or even just general advice that you may have picked up over the years, or maybe this is your first advice session, in which case thank you so much for choosing mine. But you may have already seen this around, but the biggest thing besides what I'm going to go into today, the biggest piece of advice always is that a good writer, or at least anybody who would like to write books or anything really, should be a reader first and foremost. So I'm going to do a little shout out to the books in my background. Getting a good idea of what subject material is already out there, finding inspiration from what you love and what you love to read and become immersed in is going to be your best bet, and something that feels really authentic for readers. And so for you writing your first novel, if it's something that you really love and that you want to develop, and you have it's a real passion project, writing anything, because otherwise it can be a bit stressful if you try and obviously make that into an income, into a job, which a lot of people do, and I would like to at some point in the future. You really just want to focus on the enjoyment element. If you like an idea, then you just really need to take it and run with it. So to that point, the first place you're going to start is actually with notebooks. Or you can plan on a computer if you prefer, if you have a Word document open, but you need to start making notes. Before your ideas leave you, you want to try and get them on paper, in whichever method you choose. I have 2 that I currently work with for my debut novel. So I have this writing planner, which is really helpful for me for goals and hitting word counts and things, but it's not as important as we get started on a novel. It's a really sandboxy, sky's the limit phase, where you're getting your basic idea reined in from being out here to kind of more concentrated, that you can actually start spiderwebbing from and making your plot points. So this is a nice addition, but not necessary. I just start with a normal plain old notebook, and actually this one doesn't have lines. It allows me a lot of freedom to draw and sketch and connect ideas, and I prefer that, but of course you can do whatever you wish, whichever notebook you please. So ideally where you're going to start is looking through your inspiration personally. Do you love fantasy novels or fantasy films? Do you love sci-fi, romance, mystery? Whatever it is, you want to choose something that is near and dear to you. And as I mentioned earlier, it'll be a lot more authentic when you're telling that story. So really look everywhere you can and just absorb media and kind of become immersed in it and really feel as if you have a great understanding or just a big love of some particular thing that you want to write a novel about. So for me, my novel is actually a bit of a hodgepodge, really. It's difficult to define, but the easiest way is a fantasy mystery novel. It is medieval-esque time frame, and it came about from my love of Dungeons and Dragons, and also my love of mystery and crime novels that I talked about in earlier videos too. So I kind of took those huge loves of my life and I smashed them together. And then it's just been me picking kind of various threads that I can weave together to make them mesh and make it feel cohesive and not just like two different genres separate to one another. But you can obviously write whatever it is you're looking for. Once you have your concept in mind, that is where we need to nurture it and help it grow. So that is where our notebook or whatever medium for your planning is going to come in. I would really recommend a notebook. It really helps with if you have offshoot ideas that you write later on, you can connect them back in a physical form so you can see like an actual link between them. And I am a massive lover of spider diagrams because of that same thing. You have an idea, you can visualize it, put it in the middle of your page, and then you can offshoot multiple things and pull it back to your original concept. And that is really fun for me, whatever method you like though. You just need to really start thinking and immersing yourself in this concept that you've come up with for your novel. And once you have that, you'll start finding, building the world and things from that, making your characters, which we'll go into in a later video, will be so much more enjoyable and a lot easier for you as well. So what really the first thing to do is to just get your concept nailed down. And just become, if you want to do research, which I do recommend, into the genre, if you decide to do historical fiction, for example, into the era that you're going to be writing about, this is where you start. These are our complete, imaginative stages. Not that making characters in your actual worldview isn't imaginative, but this is where you're really like taking something that's up here and pinning it down, putting it on paper. And so what I kind of recommend for new writers to do is to take your concept, and once you've really kind of looked into every avenue you can think of, you don't want to go into too narrow an alleyway, if that makes sense, to start with. You just want to be relatively large to begin, and then you start pinning things together. That's the best way to describe it. And you don't want to pigeonhole yourself too early either. So once you have your great concept that you're super passionate about, you think, I could write this all day and probably be tired, but I would still love it at the end of the day. That is a big deal, by the way. Really try and choose something that you feel passionate about. And once you have that, that is where I recommend for people to take it and then summarize that in 1 to 2 sentences, or into, as I mentioned earlier, my fantasy mystery novel with kind of the elements of Dungeons and Dragons medieval era. You want to try and after being big picture, put it into a small picture that you're going to eventually be able to tell people about once you've gone down the line. It also helps your brain start kind of pulling things together. As I said, it will start that honing down process for you ahead of time, but really kind of like take your big worldview that you've got from this great wonderful concept and pin it down into it, boil it down to its absolute bare bones points. And so, for example, In my novel, it is, as I mentioned, a fantasy mystery with elements of medieval time and like kind of high fantasy with adventurers and such things. And it is about one man who wants to be a logical, law-abiding and law-keeping man in a world where the only real law is the adventurers, and they are looked up to as, you know, almost kind of gods among the rest of the men. And my main character, he wants to just help where he is. He wants to police it. He wants to keep people safe. He wants to stop all these robbers and petty crimes that are just ruining the city. And so that is kind of, although I did long form it a little bit there, that is my short view of what my novel will be. And that's where you're going to start your process. It can take you as long or as short of a time as you see fit, as you take. It doesn't have to be just a quick thing that you can just spitball and have it done in 5 minutes. It took me days, weeks to get everything pinned down and for me to feel happy and comfortable with my full concept. And once you have that and you have it written down, or you've got it memorized, or you have, you know, that general thing ready to go, that is where we're going to springboard into the meatier stuff, where we're going to make characters and world building. And that really is going to be, they're going to be different episodes, since they're going to be so in depth. This first episode really is just to help encourage you and think of different ways to get your concept on paper, and just remembering to stay passionate if you can. Just really turn it over as much as you can in your brain. Don't just kind of start jumping straight into writing the actual novel itself. Have your concept, think about it, really try to place yourself into this world, and just kind of the general overview that you have written down, hopefully, as you've gotten the main concept pinned down. Just really get yourself in a good place with that and feel as if you love it. There'll be times where you really don't love your novel, especially as you're in the actual meat of writing the story and making things connect and thinking, well, I need to have this plot point that comes up in about 20 chapters from now. How am I going to do that? It gets stressful, I won't lie to you. So therefore, having something that you truly love and that you, at the end of the day, are going to enjoy doing, even if it can be kind of stressful because you made a huge plot hole in chapter 3 because now you're coming back to it in chapter 50 and you can't believe you've done that. It happens, trust me. You want to be able to come back to something that you adore and that you want to put out in the world. It is a real labor of love that people, and so many authors and writers, don't actually touch on the actual reality of writing too much. That you can feel like you're bashing your head against a wall sometimes. That will happen. I'll also have some tips and tricks about how to actually overcome writer's block and all things like that, which will help in this novel writing process for you, hopefully. But that's going to actually wrap up today on my first super short little episode about your concept, getting your novel going. You really want to pour everything you can into it. Try and absorb as much different forms of media, reading books, watching films, listening to music. Totally immerse yourself in whatever it is, whatever concept or idea you have, the best you can. But not to the point, and you might find yourself doing this, copying things. Obviously it can happen even without realizing it. You could have seen something somewhere and you've decided it's the best thing ever, but it already exists. As one of my teachers used to say to me, the mountain of writing novels or books has been climbed a million times, but not every pathway has been found. From you looking at loads of different media out there to get a feel for what the telling you're going to put forward into the world, you're going to make your own path. And that's what I'm going to guide you along in these coming episodes. It's going to be a long series, as you can probably imagine. So you probably definitely want to hit that subscribe button to keep up with everything as I go through it. And I'm really excited to take you on this journey. And while I'm still writing myself, I'm still going along with my first ever novel, which has been so exciting and rewarding for me after years and years of trying and never having anything stick. And so I really want to share that feeling with all of you out there who are watching this video. And if you have any questions, as ever, just leave it in a comment down below. My Instagram DMs are always open as well. That link will be in the description. It'll also be on the right hand side of my screen once I've got everything wrapped up, and on my banner. I also have Facebook and Twitter, which I post little updates to relatively frequently, not only about my writing, but I try to be somewhat witty on those platforms as I make some little jokes and puns and things like that. And I also have a Patreon where my patrons will enjoy various different perks and exclusive access to my work in progress novel, also my poetry, my short stories. Anything I write they get to see first, and they get really cool little inside looks about how I do my writing, what processes I use, what tips and tricks I have up my sleeve. And so if you're interested, you can go ahead and pledge on that as well. But otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. There'll be some more content coming at you in the coming days, so I really hope you stick around, and I hope you have a good one.